Hello and welcome to Can't Find My Way Home, the podcast where expats from around the globe talk about the music and art scene in their adopted home. I'm your host, Craig. Oh, interesting. Okay, so is this when you tend to be a bit more productive? Or for now, anyway?
Yeah, for sure.
Ryan, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your expat journey. How did you get to where you are today?
Well, when I was 19, I'm now 28. I was in a town in the south of New Zealand called Queenstown, and I met a German girl, and we quickly fell in love. And by the time I was 21, I decided to move to Germany. And so I packed up my acoustic guitar. I'd managed to save 400 euros to my name and my meager possessions, and I shipped myself over to Berlin on the premise that I could busk my way to rent and living. And that was based on an experience I'd had on one of the main squares called Alexanderplatz, which is one of the main central squares in Berlin. I'd taken this crappy busking app there, played for, I don't know, half an hour, and I'd made like 60 euros or 100 euros or something from all these tourists. So I thought, this will be easy. You know?
Right, yeah, cool.
I could just do
jackpot.
This. Yeah, jackpot. I was like, I could just do this a couple of times a week, and I'll surely be able to survive quite nicely. So I arrived in Berlin with my guitar and all that, and my girlfriend at the time was already saying, "You need to find your own place. You know, you're not staying with me." Okay. One of the first things I did actually over there was purchase another guitar, or it might have been an amp or something. So I was already down 50 or 100 euros, and I went back to the same spot. It's like, sweet, I'll go back to the same spot, easy. I'll make some money, make enough for a deposit for a house in a few days, and I'll be fine. And played for about 10 minutes, and the police showed up and shut me down immediately. You can't play here. Okay. So, that's fine. Surely somewhere else would be good. And I wandered around the whole city, and all of the good places where there are plenty of tourists, the police would immediately shut me down. And then the only places I could play without being disturbed were next to busy roads, high traffic areas, but so noisy that you couldn't actually get your music across to them. And so I ended up going from, an average of, half an hour, 60 euros, 120 euros an hour to like 20 an hour. If I was lucky, which is pretty hard on the voice, trying to slog that through. So I ended up I managed to get an apartment through a friend that was like 300 euros a month, like kind of a shithole, but really cool in the same way, in a really old building with all of these crazy characters that I should have been the craziest one as the Auslander, the foreigner musician in the building. But the other people in that building were just amazing. I'm probably going to write a sitcom film, series about it one day. So ended up still managing to live from busking there for a few years, paying my rent and getting by, and trying to write music at the same time. And had a lot of formative experiences there. Some pretty intense experiences, some pretty good experiences. And so there was quite a big Berlin period, and then I've lived between Germany and New Zealand right up until now. Berlin, lived in Leipzig for a while, and now I'm sort of Cologne's become like the next base. So there's so much of that story that can continue, but that sort of answers the question of how I got to Germany.
Just save the rest for the memoirs, eh? The juicy stuff.
Yeah, sure. I've talked about it in some places, but there's some pretty fun stuff.
What would you say the scene's like when you were there? Like differences between Berlin, Leipzig, and Cologne musically? I mean, is there, Berlin being the capital, of course, and being a bit more cosmopolitan, for choice of a better word, but there's just more of a scene there. What about other places outside there?
So I was pretty much only in the singer-songwriter folk scene, although Berlin, I had some DJs find me on the street and asked me to record some songs with them, and they were deep house DJs, and they introduced me to the world of electronic music, and it blew me away and completely changed me. So yeah, Berlin's very famous for its electronic scene, especially its techno scene, and these really pretty out there clubs, Berghain and Kit Kat and all these really pretty interesting edgy places. Leipzig is known as Little Berlin, so I thought, it's Eastern Germany, was still pretty cheap rent when I was there. Yeah, I mean, Berlin, it's unique in that no one really cares what you wear or what you do, as long as you're not harming others. There's punks, and there's you might be on the U-Bahn or the subway at 9 in the morning, and there'll be there'll be a guy with a choker chain on the ground with on a leash with another guy holding him, full of leather and stuff, drinking beer, and it's 9:30 in the morning on a Tuesday. So it's just, no one even bats an eyelid in Berlin with that. Whereas I haven't seen that so much in some of the other cities, especially the ones down in the south and that. It's a wee bit more, people dress up a bit more posh, I suppose, in some of those places. But musically, I can't comment, because I just busked around the place, and I busked all around Europe. Most of the Western European countries, and some of the Eastern European countries, Czech Republic and Poland and a few others. So I didn't really get to see the different scenes. I was just in my own little folk singer-songwriter bubble when I was touring around. But there's definitely different moods and impressions and atmospheres in the different cities in Germany. Cologne has this reputation, for example, of being incredibly friendly and welcoming and multicultural, and you really feel it there. The people are really, really lovely. Berlin has the reputation, as you know, of being edgy and out there, and kind of anything goes. But there's also a coldness and an anonymity to Berlin, which is some people like it, some people don't. Leipzig was a bit friendlier, and each of the little towns in Germany has its own special characteristics, I'd say, in my experience at least. But musically, I just did the singer-songwriter thing for most of the time, just rocking around,
Was that how you started out in music? I mean, from an early age, were you kind of more into the kind of singer-songwriter folk scene when you started out in New Zealand?
Yeah, from about 17, I started playing professionally in bars and cafes and stuff. And the best way to do that was just with an acoustic guitar. You made, it was easiest enough to accompany yourself, and you made the most money. And I've done that for a good decade now. It's taken me, I think, across 20 countries or so, and managed to pay just about all my bills for a decade, mostly from acoustic music, which has been pretty awesome. Weddings and all that sort of thing. So it was just the natural thing to fall into when I was in music school to get by, and then that became the default thing. But at some point, after seeing a lot of the electronic music and going to the clubs and seeing the vibe there, I realized I don't want to make people cry, which I've done a bunch of times with the acoustic guitar. I want to make them euphoric, and I want to make them dance, and I want to make them maybe consider things and think. So I shifted, came back to New Zealand, put my head down and took it seriously, and formed my band Beacon Bloom, which is we've just about finished a New Zealand tour this summer, which has been pretty awesome.
I mean, you're on the side of the world where the regulations have been, I would say, completely different from where I'm speaking from in Dortmund or the UK or wherever it is. It seems to be that you've been quite lucky in this respect to go out and play and audiences and whatnot.
It's been amazing because our lockdown we had the same lockdown that most of the world had in March. Ours only lasted 6 weeks, the full one, and then there was regional ones sometimes. But pretty much after that, they managed to eliminate Corona from the whole country, and then we the whole economy has been open for most of it. So we've been able to throw incredible parties and play shows and do all the pretty much normal life here.
Yeah, fantastic. Long may it run.
Pretty amazing. Yeah. Agreed.
Speaking of that, was a nice segue into your band then, Beacon Bloom. So how would you describe them? Is there an elevator pitch for the band?
Beacon Bloom, the intention of the project is to move people physically and emotionally. Every song is danceable, but isn't necessarily dance music. And has the creative constraint of electronica, so there's electronic drums and electronic elements and synthesizers. My voice and my bandmate's voice, Jimmy, are on nearly every track. And we're quite genre fluid. It's hard to describe. It's always difficult to describe music, but we especially don't. Yeah, but some people are like, I love reggae, and we've got a roots reggae band, and that's what we do. And you can kind of imagine what it is. We are a wee bit more fluid with it, so it fits broadly in the genres of like electronica and melodic house, but yeah, it's pretty hard to define. Soaring vocals, a lot of synths, electronic drums, a bit of psychedelic stuff in there.
I mean, of course, the best way for people to find out for themselves is to go and check it out, right? That's the most. It works for everyone. Influences, Ryan. I mean, we can either talk about influences in general, from your own musical influences growing up or to present day, or maybe influences that have influenced Beacon Bloom.
Sure.
That did quite well.
So there's like Jeff Buckley's one of my main, probably foundational influences. He's just the most incredible male vocalist. Other musical ones, Radiohead was pretty big. There's a band called Bonobo. Do you know Bonobo? The British downtempo producer. But saw them play live in 2018, and that's kind of what kicked off the band. That's what really gave the energy to the start of the band, because it's just, we were right at the front, right in front of the subs, and he had a full band, the drummer and horn section and singer, and he was playing bass and doing some electronic stuff and synths, and it's like it's really gorgeous music that you can listen to, or you can dance to a lot of it. But yeah, just blew me away just seeing that live. Just proper inspiration, you know. There's so many other ones. A lot of life itself, and a lot of the psychedelic world, and a lot of the craziness of Berlin and the electronic scene, and the podcast itself has taken my mind in all sorts of strange places, which inevitably ends back into it. I don't know if that answers the question sufficiently, but
no, definitely.
I could go on fractally forever how that influences.
I was going to say, you think you're more of a recording band, or as well as a live band, or which platform? Since you're going to be moving back to Germany, how's that going to work with the band? You'll just produce music rather than perform it live, or what's the next step for the band?
So our strength has been live performance. We just managed to play, I think it was our 8th show ever, was after one of New Zealand's biggest bands, at one of New Zealand's biggest festivals on New Year's Eve at like 1 a.m. on the main stage. We managed to get that slot on like our 8th show ever. So just super blessed and super lucky to have landed that. But yeah, our live show is our strength at the moment, and this year we're focusing a little bit more on streaming and global audience building. But right now the strength has been our live shows, because we also throw these, myself in a big collective here in Aotearoa, Christchurch in New Zealand, have been throwing these they're called intentional events, and they're these immersive art parties with electronic music. Big focus on harm reduction, big focus on connection, and secret venues, beyond the restrictions of having a commercial venue in New Zealand, which are quite restrictive. So yeah, everyone dresses up in costumes, and there's musical night, and there's different zones. There's like chill out temple zones, and there's art all over the walls everywhere, and there's projection mapping, and there's like theatrical stuff that takes over the party. And it was a big welcoming ceremony at our last one with big flamethrowers and all sorts of stuff.
Cool.
So yeah, the band's played. We've sort of cut our teeth at those events that we've been a part of curating, and so the live thing's really been the strength. But yeah, we're shifting our focus to the streaming and the global audience building this year. So in Germany, I'll be doing a few DJ gigs if there's any gigs available. Otherwise, we'll just be focusing on getting songs released and produced and mixed and written, writing some more stuff.
Go get the heavy lifting out the way first, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe we can talk about the band itself then. How did you all get together? I mean, there's from the videos that I've seen, I think there's 4 of you. I've seen one with a drummer and one without a drummer, so maybe you can fill in the blanks for me.
Sure. So Beacon Bloom is made up of myself, James Allen, and Joss Doggett at the moment. Thomas is the drummer that you would have seen, or it might have been John T. O'Connor. There's a revolving cast of very talented. Awesome.
You do the Spinal Tap of drummers thing, right?
Yeah. So we're being a wee bit more electronic at the moment, but both of those guys, Thomas and John T, are incredible drummers, and so it's basically James and I came together after a project that was before Beacon Bloom, called Cosmic Tortoise, which was also the podcast's initial name. Had this idea to make a podcast that was a name, and then the band would be the name, and then it would be like a festival, and it'd be all this stuff together. But it got too confusing, so we rebranded both of the things. But yeah, Jimmy joined. He always wanted to do. He told me he always wanted to do a live dance band as well. So he's super creative. He's amazing at writing really interesting harmony and music, and he's a very talented musician himself. He can play pretty much all the instruments and instant harmonizer with vocals and things like that. John T and Thomas are good friends. They've known them for years and played in a whole bunch of different projects with them, and they've both got their own solo projects, which are epic. And Joss is a friend we met late 2019 at a festival we helped curate, and he's a ridiculously talented DJ who's come on board with us to DJ, but he's also musical, so he'll be moving into synth playing and production and stuff when we get enough time to sit in the studio and figure that out. So the band just came together, and then a whole team emerged. Videographers appeared, and photographers appeared, and had a couple of awesome sound people, and the team just sort of slowly emerged and is growing. And a good friend of mine's doing the merchandise for us. He has a whole fashion brand and clothing brand that he started, and so we're working with him. And it's a really cool collaborative creative ecology in Christchurch at the moment. There's a real melting pot of really talented people going for it with their art, and Beacon Bloom's a bit of a shelling point for that. It's like a place, it's an excuse for a bunch of people to get together, and some of these parties or festivals we throw, groups come along, and it's just Beacon Bloom's there and the performance is there, and that's part of it, but the community's another big part of it as well, which is really amazing. It's just emerged in the last 2 years, and especially after the whole crisis, it's really amplified all of that and brought it together.
Have you seen anyone like yourselves, either in Germany or in New Zealand? Have you seen similar projects or similar musicians trying a similar thing, or do you think you're quite onto something? I would use the word unique, but I don't. Are you onto something different?
we're picking up the baton from the likes of Radiohead and Moderat, which are a German electronic band. They're amazing. They're probably a big influence too, to be fair. And Rufus the Soul also been around. They do kind of the deep house with vocals thing. If you mixed Chris Martin from Coldplay with deep house in a good way, then it'd be Rufus, I guess. And then there's another band called Who Made Who. I think they're from Denmark, and they're really fun and awesome. All of those guys are doing similar stuff to us. Perhaps we're doing similar stuff to them. I'd say our point of difference is that we're a lot more genre fluid. We've got pop songs and deep house tracks and space disco tracks, and that's quite nice. We quite enjoy that our songs aren't too samey. They're quite varied.
And in this respect, you're not really stuck in the one genre, right, or the one way of playing, or you can have experiment a bit more. Or to see where jams go, or however you put your work together, it can take its own shape.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like whatever comes out of the creative process can be, I'm starting to come to the conclusion that most of songwriting is like trash, and then it's like gold mining, like if you're mining for some precious alloy in the earth, right, most of it's going to be soil or something which you're not looking for, and then you're going to find the precious alloy. And I think that's the same with the creative process. I read that Mozart and a few of the other great composers did that, and also a bunch of, I can't remember who the contemporary songwriters in that were, but they just put out heaps and heaps and heaps of stuff. Not put it out, but creatively output heaps of stuff, and then choose the best things. And so that's kind of what we do. We've got hundreds of demos, and you just pick out the gold. And some, the creative process for us is pretty random, and we just follow it where it goes. It can end up in being in a weird space disco track, or it can be a piano ballad that we turn into a bit of a tune. Can have post-rock elements. It just goes kind of all over the show, but it's still somehow united. There's a few unitary elements of the vocal, the feeling, and the danceability of it keeps it somewhat contained. But a live show with us is very varied, and it's not repetitive. That's for sure.
One of the things about, like you just mentioned there, it could be a pop song or some kind of psychedelic feel to it. But what I liked about the tracks that I've seen on YouTube, or at least the live performances, you're not really restricted by time either. If it goes 7 minutes or longer, or whatever it is, it takes its own form, and I really like that. It builds up, and you can let it breathe.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with the 3-minute pop song, of course. I mean, that's by itself. That's
those too.
Exactly right. But I kind of like that way when you kind of just see what happens and let it go.
Yeah.
But you still need a bit of. Speaking for myself, you still need a bit of discipline to kind of keep it without too much jamming. Maybe this is me speaking as a drummer. I don't know, but like, I have to keep doing this same bit for like the next 2 minutes, or
Yeah, that is tricky. Both Thomas and John Deere think it's not particularly fun for drummers to be playing house music sometimes, because it's just it's like the same. Sometimes it's the same groove for like 5 minutes with a couple of fills maybe, but yeah, for drummers it maybe sometimes isn't quite as fun. But it does its thing, and it's all about the music at the end of the day. If it's got to breathe, as you say, it's got to breathe. It's got to do its thing. It's got to expand and contract as it needs to, and as it feels right, I suppose. And some songs are long, and some songs are, like, as you say, 3 minutes, and that's all they need.
Get your 3 minutes in change, right, and on to the next one. Pay the bills, as it were.
Yeah.
So you get some really nice looking websites. They're kind of quite, it just tells us what you're going to do, and you have your own Ryan Ferris website, then there's the Beacon Bloom website, and the third one in the trilogy, I don't even know if it is a trilogy, there might be more, is your own podcast. Maybe you can tell us a little about that too. You're up to 50 plus episodes? No, you're more than 50 episodes now, eh?
I'm not sure where we're at. Where are we? 50 something. 53. 54 will be out later today, I think. Yeah, so there's like the Ryan Ferris music one, which is an old website, which I've just basically said, go check out Beacon Bloom, that's where we're at. But the podcast, so the podcast started, I think, 3 years ago. I just started one. I don't really know why. Just felt like starting one. Just this podcast was starting to come on their way up. And initially I didn't really know what it was going to be. It slowly transformed itself into being an examination of transhumanism through every lens possible. So transhumanism is the self-directed transformation of Homo sapien humans into whatever the next species is. So like we were around at the same time as the Neanderthal before they disappeared, and our predecessors were like Homo erectus and a few other hominoid species, and going all the way back. And at some point, Homo sapiens, which is the modern human, will be it'll be impossible to say that the new humans are the same as the Homo sapiens. So I think Yuval Noah Harari termed them Homo Deus, which I think is something to do with gods. Sapiens is to do with language, I believe. So we're already doing this. This trend is already happening. There's already implants and genetic engineering, and even just the phone is a huge extension of identity and interface into this massive digital space, which is completely changing us as people and as our goals and our identity and our values and all sorts of things. So anything that pushes towards that transformation into the new thing is transhumanism. And so it's a global trend, and it's an important thing, and it's an important thing to pay attention to, and to figure out what parts of our legacy human system we want to keep, what parts are good and what parts aren't so good, how we want to transcend those. And yeah, if it's going to happen regardless, it seems to be. There's a lot of crazy stuff with AI and with Elon Musk's Neuralink, and it's accelerating pretty quickly. And if it's going to happen, it seems like it's going to happen whether we want it to or not. It'd be good to do it in a skillful way rather than a dystopian way. So I've been talking to professors from likes of Harvard, and authors and scientists and artists and musicians and online curators and bloggers and all sorts of people, giving their different perspectives on their particular fields, but also on life and on humanity, and just figuring it all out, just getting as many different lenses as possible and kind of coming to my own conclusions. And it's taken me on a wild intellectual ride all around the world and into a whole different bunch of niche spaces. And yeah, it's starting to make its way also into the band as well, and the band's probably going to make its way into the podcast. So it's all a big exploration. Yeah.
Some of the guests on the podcast, I've listened to a couple of the episodes myself, but the one we were just talking to before we started was from the Know Your Meme website, and it was kind of interesting just to see how as you get into it with your guest, about how the meme started and the kind of importance it plays. And now it seems like every other day there's a new meme, like one that goes viral. So the one that's just come out is the Meghan and Harry with Oprah. When they were doing this interview, in Oprah's face, she's doing this kind of looked away in shock horror type thing, And of course, before that, it was like the Bernie Sanders one where he just appears with his jacket on, sitting outside in the cold and all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, for example, just as a reference point, what significance would you say like the meme has in this respect.
So that chat was with Don Corbell. He's the managing editor of Know Your Meme, and Know Your Meme archives, and it's kind of like a historical archive of the internet through the meme space. Memes are really interesting. It's, one analog of it would be the old comics that you used to see in newspapers and stuff, and they're kind of a lot of them. Don talked about them evolving. The early ones were just kind of silly, kind of benign, advice dog. Pay for your pizza with snakes, and it's this dog like, just these kind of silly memes. Or even earlier ones were silly, but they've become increasingly cutting and political, and have occupied different parts of the political sphere, and the great war of ideas, which is going on online and in the meme space. The meme space is the battle of belief across the world, and it's actually kind of like the most important battle there is for us, right? Like every single meme, a meme isn't just like a pixelated image on the internet, with some weird words under it. A meme is basically an idea that's viral, that spreads in this. Richard Dawkins coined the term, a bit like genes. There's like the gene pool, and genes are passed down to generations. Memes are like they're an idea that will propagate in populations and make its way around the population and have certain influence. And some of them become viral, and some of them don't. Some of them will change the way people think. So there could be very like complex, multi-layered memes, and some of them are just like silly ones, like the advice dog or whatever. So yeah, Don Corbell's he's been in that space for a long time. They've been collecting a lot of the memes. He's seen, he can see a lot of the trends of the internet, which things are becoming popular. It's kind of like the subconscious of the internet is almost expressed through memes, and some of them are just a lot more cutting than article will be or anything else. It's just a lot of it can be summed up in this small picture. But yeah, the war of ideas is it's important, and it happens in meme space essentially.
Well, I mean, in the past we had the caricatures or the cartoonists in newspapers and this kind of print medium, and taking it forward or until the likes of Gerald Scarfe doing the work with Pink Floyd and so on and all that, and you had these. He also did a lot of political cartoons and stuff like that. But yeah, it's an interesting step to take it from there onto this new level. As you said, when people have it on their phones, or it's just there. It's a lot of it is just right there in front of you. I was interested to hear also that Richard Dawkins name. I wasn't, as you get into it in the episode with Don. It was I was like, Richard Dawkins, was that really?
Yeah.
It wasn't really the name that I was expected to come up with. It was kind of like, all right. So that's what he's been doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he came up with that term quite a while ago. It's useful. It's a useful term.
Yeah, there we go. Here lies. What about plans for the podcast? Are you going to kind of keep with the same theme? I mean, the theme kind of, as you were explaining, the theme's kind of growing and developing, but are there plans to maybe kind of step outside the main idea of the podcast and branch out into some other things?
It's super loose as it is. Like it's, the transhumanist thing is really loose in part of it, and it can encompass nearly anything. So I think that'll probably stay the loose focal point of it. But it's sort of at the moment it sort of leads itself. One episode and one bit of intellectual exploration might lead to a book that I'll read, or a particular person, or something will come up, and then that will lead me to go to the next person. So one of the people I talked to, so there's a guy called Jim Rutt, and he's got a podcast, and he recommended a book called Sand Talk by Tyson Younger Porter, who's an indigenous man from Australia who's also a complex systems theorist. So he sits in this really interesting middle point, and he's written this incredible book called Sand Talk, which is part novel, part complex systems theory, part dreaming story, like the Indigenous Australian dreaming story, part sand talk itself, which is when the Indigenous people of Australia would draw these symbols in the sand and yarn and talk about different ideas and stories. It's really difficult to describe this book, but I heard that on Jim Rutt's podcast, and I reached out to Tyson. He's been on the podcast. There's going to be another episode with him released soon. And then that sent me on each of them sends me on different trajectories. That sent me on a trajectory to find out more about the Indigenous people of New Zealand. And hence I interviewed Benjamin McCarthy, who's a skydiver, te reo Māori teacher, and yoga teacher and all sorts of stuff. And then because of him, almost in a way, I've thought about learning more about the synthesis of New Zealand culture. The New Zealand Europeans that came and sort of did the colony thing, and the native Māori people. New Zealand is one of the best places in the world that's managed to merge the cultures, but it's still happening and it's still getting better. There's still a lot of work to do. So I'm really interested in seeing how that synthesis happens. So I just found out that one of our flatmates who just lives below us in the house below us, she's studied Māori, like traditional Māori healing, for example, which is pretty interesting. So I'm going to be talking to her tomorrow. So each thing, and then a chat that I had with Mango Dogwood, who's in the crypto space, last week has sent the band on a full crazy trajectory into the crypto space. So it's just like things happen, and then it sends you off somewhere, and then I go to the next place, and then things just seem to keep emerging as time goes on. Just really fun. It's a really fun emergent process.
It definitely sounds like it, and I look forward to dipping into a few more of the episodes. I like it on your website. You've given us if people are maybe a bit not perplexed, but they're a bit. Where do you start with a subject like this, right? Because you put like a top 5 at the top of the page, or a list of episodes where people can kind of dip in, and maybe it's a bit more accessible, or. Yeah, and what is quite nice about it as well is you seem to quite like the long format. There's not so much of you see how the conversation goes, and then it just kind of develops, and it maybe takes its natural course. It's maybe not a subject you could put maybe 20 minutes on, or maybe you could. I don't know.
Yeah, you could. You just have to narrow it down to like one topic, I guess, one little band, and I'm going to be exploring that soon. I think I'm going to try. Been advised to make bite-sized episodes for people that are commuting in 20 minutes. Okay,
right, because this is the kind of curse of the podcaster, right? Because sometimes things just happen, and I did an episode recently where I just kept it as I kept more or less the whole thing, and just put it in 2 parts.
Yeah.
And that's because there was too much. It was a good conversation. There's a nice flow, and then you think, well. Because you just edit it, there's nothing left, it's just like you've taken it, you're just like, oh, okay, this is not really the point. So, but yeah, it's finding that nice sweet spot between the half hour to 40 minutes mark. Yeah. Speaking of which, I can edit a little bit of this out. Anything else you want to add, Ryan?
Don't know. No, my brain's in other places, so if there's input coming in, I can speak, but otherwise it's
all right. No worries.
Yeah.
How about we take a look at a top 5? I'll give you a couple of questions, and
sure.
I'd actually thought I'd sent you them, but yes, yeah. This is what happens when you turn 50, man. It's all over, right? You can't remember what day it is and all that. I'm like, oh. Okay, I'll give you the first question. A guilty pleasure. The way I phrase this, someone you shouldn't like but you do, or someone who's maybe not normally on your playlist. This kind of idea.
Like music.
Yeah.
Music wise.
Mm-hmm. These are all music related.
First one that comes to mind is Robbie Williams. But I'm not guilty about it. I'm like,
right. Yes. Great, right. Okay.
Who would be my guilty one?
That way when you find yourself thinking, I shouldn't really be big in this, but it's quite good,
You know what? I think if there's anything I genuinely like, I just own it. I'm just like, no, I like it, and I don't really care. You know, like Robbie Williams might be one, you know, that other people might find a bit strange or something, you know, or it's uncool now or something, but he's great. Like,
to his credit, he had, I don't know if he still does, but to his credit, he had a lot of good songwriters working with him. The guy, I think his name's Guy Chambers or something, but he worked a lot in the past with some other, you know, he was like the brains, if you like, behind the songs.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And of course, he does the rest. So, but yeah, you know.
Yeah, I like, he was a vibe and he did his thing, and he also did some awesome swing stuff. I don't know. I that would be someone's guilty pleasure, I guess. But I'll just totally own it and just say that's the first thing that came to mind. I'll just say Robbie Williams.
Fair enough. Who should we be listening to, Ryan? Tell us someone that maybe we're not familiar with, but you're going to put that right for us.
I'll have to dive into my Spotify very quickly because this is always a thing when you've got way too many things you're into. Someone that you guys won't know, probably, that you should know, would maybe be what have I got here?
You mentioned a couple earlier, actually. There was Bonobo.
Yeah, he's awesome. Look at my albums. What have I got here? Trying to find something that's a wee bit less known. We can throw. I think we could throw Noah Gunderson out there because everyone else I've got here is probably pretty well known, but Noah might not be quite as well known. Noah Gunderson album Ledges. It's folk artist from Seattle. Amazing album. That would be the one, I'd say.
Reminiscent of anyone in particular? I know you were saying you were a big influenced by Jeff Buckley, or a big Jeff Buckley fan.
No, he's actually very much got his own voice. I couldn't put a reminiscent thing on it. I'd just say, if you like folk music, listen to Noah Gunderson. The other folk artist that's amazing, and also album wise, just been listening to again recently, is the Staves. And I'd say the first album, Dead, Born and Grown by the Staves. That one or Noah Gunderson, Ledges, are both just amazing folk albums, modern folk albums. Yeah,
fantastic. Always good to get some new stuff for the playlist. Go-to karaoke song, Ryan. If you were so
if I could sing it, would be "You're the Voice" by John Farnham.
Whoa, yeah, that's a bit of an epic. You know?
Yeah, if you're going to do karaoke, you go.
I don't know. You need to grow a particular 1980s hair thing for that as well. I think just to give it the full rendition.
You might need a mullet or something for that. It's an absolute tune. Yeah.
Favorite venue, a place that you've either played yourself or one of these places that you would like to play in the future. Or maybe you've seen a band there at this particular place.
Honestly, the town hall here in Aotearoa, Christchurch, is awesome. Just the town hall is like amazingly acoustically engineered building. That would be really great. The other dream venue would be somewhere in the Funk House in Berlin. Have you heard about the Funk House?
I know of it, yeah.
Yeah, it was designed in the DDR time. When the Soviets had the eastern side. It's an incredible, crazy place. Like, I've done some recording there, and they have an entire concert hall that doesn't even have seats. It's just for recording. Like, it's got a few seats, but it's not like a proper concert hall. It's just for recording classical music and stuff. And they've got some of the best acoustic rooms in the world there. And they've got these clocks in the building that used to encode the the encoded messages that they'd send, right? So like the clock as it turned would like change some kind of mechanism on the coding, and then that would help send the coded message out. And the clocks are still there, and amazing acoustic space. The town hall in Christchurch is amazing. We played one I've played in. We when I was about 18 or so, we snuck into a damaged water reservoir near my house. It held millions of liters of water, and it's just basically this insanely giant concrete tank, cavernous thing. And the decay time on the reverb in there was like 15 seconds or something crazy. So you go woo, and I go woo for like 10, 15 seconds. So we snuck in there and recorded some songs in there. They're on YouTube actually, and that was like really crazy. I've never experienced anything like that. That amount of natural reverb in space was like bonkers.
That's a nice way to put it.
Yeah. I like venues. Yeah, I like acoustics.
Yeah, well, you can't beat it. Some places you go and it's just a functional workspace or a functional live space, but then there's other places you go where as you were just describing there, about either the natural reverb or echoes you're getting, or a building for that matter, or just the room itself. It doesn't have to be a particularly great aesthetic, but just the sounds in the room. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I've got a last question for you. I need to think of one. Let's see. Okay. You got I got one. I'd written a couple of questions and I'm like, I never remember these ones. Okay, the last one. I've done that. I've done like 40 episodes and I still can't remember them. Tell us someone you don't get, Ryan. I don't want to use the word overrated, but is there sort of an artist or something and you just think everyone's like raving about them and you just think,
like music again. Probably Kanye. Kanye West would probably be the one. Like I saw him as a person and as a creative force and as a public personality. He's actually pretty interesting, especially after seeing him on Joe Rogan for like 2 hours or whatever it was, and actually seeing the way his brain functions and works, and his vision for what he wants to create is actually pretty interesting and generally pretty positive, I think. But musically, I just never really got, he's been called a genius so many times. I just never really got it. Never really understood why people were so into it. The other one would be Beck. People also say the same about Beck. He's a genius. He's amazing. Even what was his name? Pharrell referenced a song by Beck, and I listened to it, and I was just like, Pharrell was blown away by it. I thought it was incredible, and I listened to it, and I was just like, this is...
Is that it?
Yeah. I don't
You're
know.
waiting for the penny to drop, you're just kind of like, okay, and it never happens. Yeah, Kanye's an interesting one because it's, I remember watching the Glastonbury concert he did, I don't know how many years ago, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, fairly recently. And it's just him on the stage, of course, on his own, and that was it. And I just thought, yeah, okay. I don't know, it didn't do anything for me at all,
If it doesn't resonate with us, resonates with millions of people, and that's awesome. I mean, that's art and that's music. I wouldn't say it's bad at all. I'd just say it's just whatever he's up to doesn't. I just don't get it.
Aye.
That's fine.
Yeah, exactly right. That's what that question is really for. Is you just don't get it. You're just like, I guess it's me then,
Yeah. Although I will put one disclaimer there. I did see recently he did a really hard hitting, like dark hip hop piece about America with a video, and that was really heavy and really hard. Like, okay, I think I got that one, that hit, but that was the only thing that I've seen by him that really hit. And I've tried out a bunch of his stuff. I just had to put that disclaimer in there because there was that one
okay.
thing.
So maybe this is a difference when he's going into like a social commentary as opposed to a kind of here's just a track off the album kind of thing.
Yeah, potentially, yeah.
Ryan, where can we find you then? What about your social media links?
You can find the podcast at The Good Timeline on Twitter. You can also find it at The Good Timeline on Instagram or at thegoodtimeline.com. You can find Beacon Bloom at beaconbloom.com and at Beacon Bloom on Instagram. Beacon Bloom's also on Spotify. Both of them are on pretty much all the platforms. So The Good Timeline or Beacon Bloom. Beacon like a light, bloom like a flower.
And we've, there's some nice live footage there on YouTube as well that people can kind of take a look at the band and see how it all works, right? The mechanics of it all.
There's a video coming out on Friday. I don't know when this podcast will come out, but that'll be on the 12th of March 2021. The video will be there. So if this is out before or after, that'll maybe already be out.
Next weekend. This is the joys of recording all that. Yeah, probably not this weekend, the weekend after. So it'll be a week after that.
It'll be already out. Rock Part 2. It'll be on our YouTube.
Fantastic. Ryan, thanks very much for your time. It's been a blast. Good luck with everything moving forward.
Thank you.
And good luck in Cologne. When do you think you'll arrive? Or you have a date?
I'll be in Cologne in June. Yep. So I'll be, with any luck, the country will be open a bit more and I'll be rocking around. So if I'm in Dortmund, I'll have to flick you a message so we can get a pint or something.
Right on, the cheeky pint's always good, mate. You know, or if you're playing in this neck of the woods at all, let us know and we'll swing by. Just before I finish up, I'm going to press the red button to stop it, and if you can just wait a minute or so, it kind of uploads to your end, and then you can switch it off.
Easy.
Thanks very much, Ryan.
Thanks, Greg.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks, mate.
So you should